as promised this week, and this is where I got to jump right into it out of the gates.
Hi, guys.
Okay.
Welcome back.
As promised, this week we are going over some reviews.
We're going to insult ourselves
on the podcast
through other people's words.
From some very nice folks. Some of them nice, some of them not so nice. On iTunes, I'm sure we have reviews and comments on other platforms, and we did check the reviews more so than the comments to see if you guys are good at following the rules, or if you're true libertarians who don't take no direction from nobody, and you didn't go and fill up our board with more comments. But we still have the original 4 that we were going to do last week, and we're going to get to them this week.
Thank God for that.
I know, right?
I'm sure one of us is going to get lambasted in these comments.
Listen, at this point, it could be either one of us.
It could be. And always remember that even the most successful podcasts, the JRE, check them out. They just started off getting really.
Do we really need to plug for Joe?
I mean, he needs the support. He's dwindling. Didn't you see the article that he said that if he has to walk on eggshells, he's going to quit Spotify, which was totally taken out of context. But he said it, so it must be true.
All right. So David and I on iTunes. Now, again, we don't have rates from other platforms, but we might do this every once in a while because this is fun. Let's start with let's do the compliment sandwich.
Let's do a shit sandwich.
Yes.
Let's start good.
All right. So we're going to start good with a good one. This is a 5-star. So thank you, DRK Freed.
Okay.
So DRK Freed on April 10th says, finally a podcast worth listening. The topics and discussions reflect a fair and true picture of today's political reality by clarifying issues and communicating new perspectives. A perfect mix of well-crafted arguments and wittiness. David and Dane will seriously make you laugh out loud and lift your spirit. Great work, guys. 5 stars.
A 5-star right out of the chute.
Listen,
like we got the top.
You don't get to the top without 5 stars.
Listen, we're on 4-2 pace right now. We're on 4-2 pace.
That was very kind of DRK Freed. So,
DRK Freed.
Now,
whoever that might be,
the middle portion of the sandwich, the meat, if you will, where David and I could do a little bit of improving.
The pickle on the shit sandwich.
So, he put his whole name in there, so I guess I read the whole name.
Sure.
All right. A David.
Well, hold on. Let's just go first initial of last name, just in case.
Let's go
to protect you, even though you said some. Serious
it's
shit.
public. Anybody can go to our thing on iTunes and look at it. Okay, whatever. We're just going to do initials.
Let's be classy.
DRB.
DRB.
Last December. We'll have to go back and look which episode was new around that time. We're going to assume he listened to that one.
I'm going to assume that he listened to the ones that we both think that he listened to.
What were we saying in early 2021 of December? Anyway, Mr. DRB has this to say. Cringe. Caught 2 episodes and the, quote, David guy thinks it's hilarious to be, or act, drunk for both podcasts. Maybe that seems like a cool idea if you're 23 or something, but we don't need to hear you slurring words and failing to be funny while discussing politics. David, I don't see a lot of in there for me to improve on, but what do you have to say?
Firstly, let me just say, tough, but fair. If you listen to, I think it's 68 and 69, maybe that David character got a little excited about 69 and over-imbibed too much. Or maybe that Dane character was caught in traffic and gave David too much time to get into the bottle. Yes, I was obliterated. And if you could bear with me, I try to edit myself out as much of that episode as possible. So, yes, I'll take that one on the chin. We are still figuring out the chemistry of what worked and what didn't. So I will say fair play to him. Good point. And hopefully I'm enunciating appropriately nowadays.
Mr. DRB, you know who you are. If you're still listening, which probably I highly doubt. Thank you for that comment.
I'm not going to beg you. I'm not going to beg you back. All right, DRB?
Listen, he's just going to show you with actions, not with words, that he's a changed man. And whether you actually see or hear those actions, that remains to be seen.
Well,
All right.
here we go.
So a little bit better.
Okay.
And this next one is, so Mr. DRB gave us a 2 stars. At least he gave us a second star.
Dude, I appreciate
This
that.
guy was actually relatively gracious.
He was. And then DRB, you let us know where we were slipping. And by we, I mean me.
Okay. Next one is from a quote, low skills. And when I originally saw the name and didn't read the quote, I thought that they were calling us low skills. I was like, oh, this one's going to burn. But this one, also 5 stars, has this to say: I really needed this. A podcast that tries to find a middle ground between the extremes. A podcast that is not fighting on behalf of one side or the other. Keep up the good work, boys. We catch a lot of flack, and sometimes deservedly so. If you're new here, go back and check out episode 3, Sorry Dems, where we kind of lay out why it seems like we come at the left a little bit harder than the right. And without rehashing episode 3 there, just go check that one out. But that's what we shoot for, is to be...
That was over a year ago.
Not middle policy-wise, but view things as objectively as biased humans can and try to give a nuanced, treatment to whatever the discussion is, as opposed to giving a slant here. I mean... We do give the hardcore libertarian slant, but I feel like that's pretty ecumenical.
Conservative more times than not, just because people that think that if you say something bad about the left, then you're automatically right. But the left just has more of a, like you were saying, a vocal piece. Like if someone's on a bullhorn going, all babies need to be born, like you're going to be like, okay, I'm hearing her a hell of a lot louder than everybody else. So it just stands to reason.
Yeah. And, so I'm glad that at least this person, that is his opinion of the show, because that's what we do try to do more. Yes, you're going to hear us much more upset with the left more than the right. Again, listen to episode 3 for the full analysis why. But we try to be, again, as 2 biased humans are, try to be as objective as possible and just give you our honest opinion, but still leave all of the information and stuff for you to decide whether we're nuts or not. So appreciate that, low skills. And then this sandwich has another little good slice of bread tacked on at the end.
Oh, thank Christ.
And it is another 5 star.
Wait, hold on. Would this be like a club sandwich? So it's like bread, meat, bread, meat, bread?
Yeah, except we don't have a second meat. We only had one person
Oh
say
my
something
God,
bad
you're
about
a member
us.
of the Illuminati. He's going triangles. Because
All
the
right.
club sandwich is split into triangles.
So
To
I'm having a
explain the
hard
joke.
time what this name is. Flascaris or something like that. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Might be.
That person, 5 stars, said they love it. Nuanced discussion of social and political memes that look for, wait for it, evidence before blind belief. Helpful critical thinking to throw into my brain blender to help make sense of reality. And we could all use some help with that right now.
Brain blender. I like the brain blender.
I do. I like that. That's
Let's
a
throw a
helpful
couple
little
of
analogy.
strawberries and a couple of raspberries
Yeah.
in that brain blender of yours, and maybe some protein.
Not for nothing.
Not for nothing.
These comments were actually really helpful, especially the nice ones. Because, again, one thinks we shoot down the middle ideologically.
Because they make us feel good inside. The nice ones make us feel good.
We got tinglies.
We got them.
One says what we hope we're trying to do, as failed as human beings as we
One
are.
lets
and
us know
hopefully
that
not
where we
podcasters.
slipped up.
But another one is like, they give me the evidence and then I can still make up my own mind.
Apparently, I need to check into Betty Ford.
Awesome. And then, the first one, which was just, a true picture of today's political, she's giving us credit for being straight shooters. So, or he. So thank you.
It's good to know that you shoot straight. Even if you're like muzzles slightly to the left.
And if you would like to get on that review game like these 4 kind people did, please go to any platform you catch us on and do that over there. And periodically, when we have some new ones to read, especially ones that make us chuckle or give David hell and leave me relatively alone.
Yeah,
those ones
you
will
made
make
it out
it
of
on
this
the
one pretty
episodes.
unscathed. All right.
I did.
I want some blood next time, boys.
I did. Do I get a
out
cookie?
there, my minions. Give him what for?
Yeah. So with that being said, David, are you ready to get into what all the people came here for?
Sure.
All right. In we go for episode 88. Welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction podcast, episode 88, which can be found at
the marvelous 88.
See, this is a one-man conspiracy. I know a one-man conspiracy is impossible. This is a one-man conspiracy to screw me up with these intros to the show.
I'm trying to loosen the tension, baby. Because last time we had a real rough and bumpy takeoff. There was some turbulence on a section.
This is the point about your conspiracy. Either I have
a conspiracy.
Oh, yes, a one-man conspiracy, and hear me out. Either I have the bumpy takeoff, which gives you the ability to go in and make fun of the bumpy takeoff. Or if I actually do have a clean takeoff, you got to mess it up so that it gets back to bumpy so that you have something. You don't want me to win. What did DJ Khaled say? They don't want me. You don't want me to get this intro right. So I'm going to get the intro right.
Everyone's seen this? They can see you now, Dane.
I know.
They can see your craziness. I was remarking upon the marvelous Marvin Harrison, who also wore 88.
I know. Listen, I know that you were.
I'm all ears.
I know that you were, but all right. Are we ready to go
episode
again?
88.
The marvelous Marvin episode 88. All right, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/88. You can find us on any podcast app, wherever you happen to get it. We are on all of them. And then as of the last episode, and once again, as you can see on YouTube, Odyssey, and Rumble, you can see our smiling faces.
Here we are.
If you're into that kind of thing.
A lot of hard work and dedication went into this. A lot of people figured it out a lot quicker than we did, but we're here now.
That's right. We're here trying to make the product better for you every day. Now, also
let's produce
Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram.
One? Oh, that's the one.
Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Go over there, like, subscribe, share, because we don't know where you found us. We might be wiped away at any
Where do I
time,
see chicks squat and show their boobs off again? Instagram. There we go.
And TikTok.
Not so much Facebook.
And Twitter.
Not so much Facebook.
Well,
they do it on Twitter. I've never been.
Yeah.
I'm not lying. I've never been on Twitter.
If there is a place to generate a following in any way you can make that following happen, that stuff is going on.
Just show your whatever you want to show. As much flesh as possible.
Follow us on all of those platforms. And again, you can find links to every single one of those platforms at our podcast, wmdpodcast.com. So do all that. And with that being said, David.
Yes, sir.
This week
Bob
had, I guess they're both COVID related, but this week had some interesting.
Y'all must have forgot that COVID was a thing, by the way.
Yeah, because future Nobel Prize winner Vladimir Putin put COVID completely to bed with his invasion of Ukraine.
Thank you, Pootie.
Good work. I guess big cheers for small victories, but So the first one is a topic that David and I have discussed on the podcast before, which is the idea of government is either incompetent or they're evil. In either case, they are unfit to rule you.
They're not good options. If I want incompetence or evil, again, incompetence implies they meant well, which I guess gives them some amount of credibility, but if this was the first thing that they had ever messed up, we'd probably forgive it. It was an unprecedented time, yada, yada, yada. But this is episode 266,000 of this particular sitcom that hasn't gotten a chuckle yet. So,
yeah, it's...
you want one laugh if you're a sitcom.
It is. We are living out the macro in terms of the other people in this country that think in this false red-blue dichotomy paradigm. Because so many people are in that kind of brain fog, this stuff is going to keep happening again and again. And even if you and I, or anybody that can see the obvious absurdity of this, doesn't choose to fall into those red or blue camps, it doesn't matter because their political decisions are still going to drag us along kicking and screaming.
And again, to go back to what we were saying pre-podcast or pre-show, is that it sounds like we pick on the Democrats more than the other side. But if you think that just because we're pointing at them, that the red side isn't just as guilty as the blue side, like you're fighting a losing battle at this point. So
absolutely. So this first topic has a lot of intricate numbers. I'm just going to read one paragraph and then maybe sprinkle in numbers here or there, because to really break the whole thing down, you're going to have to read the article yourself, which will be posted at wmdpodcast.com/88. You'll see the show notes pages over there, so you can read this article for yourself. It is from NBC, and it's talking
so it's
about,
not fake news. It's definitely not fake.
That's right. You are allowed.
You can trust this.
You are allowed to countenance this source and refer back to it and not be considered a horse pill eating conspiracy
but
theorist,
don't put it on
hater of all
Facebook, don't
things
put it on
good.
Twitter, don't put it on Instagram, because it's going to be flagged for.
Yeah. And so, by the way, this is also a little bit of predictive behavior. YouTube,
Stop it.
anybody?
You stop
if
it.
you kick us off for this episode, I want you to know
Show boys.
that, yeah,
It was show boys that did this.
you need to take it up with NBC.
Take it up with NBC.
Okay. So, article.
Call Lorne. All right?
Here's the magnitude, and the episode that David and I had talked previously about the abuse of the COVID, payment programs, all the money flowing out of DC at an alarmingly high rate.
I think we mentioned Orange Grove in Ohio.
That's your favorite story ever.
I love it.
You mention that all the time.
It's like there's never been an Orange Grove in Ohio.
This article has another one. Somebody in Miami living in one of the high rises downtown got like 6 or 7 loans for a farm. And the article's like, well, all you had to do was drive by there to realize there's no farm, and then they shouldn't have got the money.
Wait,
they couldn't even bother to do that.
They don't farm in Miami?
Not in downtown. No, they don't.
Interesting. Brickell doesn't have a vast plethora of potatoes.
Yeah, they do not. So this paragraph, and I'm quoting directly from the article, kind of gives you the magnitude of this whole thing. Quote, they came into their riches, they're talking about the fraudsters, came into their riches by participating in what experts say is the theft of as much as $80 billion, or about 10% of the entire $800 billion handed out in a COVID relief plan known as the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. That's on top. Okay, you think $80 billion is a lot of money? Okay, that's on top of a couple other numbers.
You ain't seen nothing yet. Baby, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Back to the article. Quote, that's on top of the $90 billion to $400 billion, which, by the way, let's just pause right there. The range of $90 billion to $400 billion, that's a 400% increase. If you have
that's like the difference between a yacht and a mega yacht. Like, I just want to put some anecdotal evidence in here, Dan.
Okay, go for it.
I'm going to let you into my world a little bit there, listener.
Oh, that's like a pontoon boat and a yacht, but I digress. Go ahead.
Dane. Last year when I was doing my taxes, I said that I did not get the check for $600 that would add up to the other check that I got to make it $1,400 to help me bail out of my situation, which I don't know if they've looked into Florida real estate lately. But baby, it's a bubbling. But even before it was a bubbling, it was still pretty expensive. $1,400 did not even cover 3/4 of my rent for 1 month. So how the fuck? And the last time I checked, we were supposed to lock down for a year. It was 2 weeks, but then it turned into a year.
Right.
So I said that I hadn't got my $600 check. So from the time my accountant sent in my taxes, I got that $600 check in the mail. So I said from that conversation, I don't have the check. He goes, okay, I'm going to go home. I get the check after I say it. I send my taxes off, and within a month, I couldn't click my fingers. They probably cashed the check and said, something's off here. So I get an audit saying that I owe them $600. I owe them the check back because I obviously got the check and I was trying to pull a fast one.
Yeah, you fraudster.
Which begged
your
$600
$600 fraud.
Which begged 2 questions. So if you're trying to help me out, and you actually did help me out to get me down the road another $600, But you helped me out too much to get me out of COVID. So we're going to need that too much help back. But you found that and this is my second point, you found that $600 like that.
Instantaneously.
But you couldn't find the potato farmer in Brickell.
I don't know if it was potatoes, but
he's a potato farmer.
Okay,
in my mind,
go with it.
In our minds, listeners, it's a potato
And when
farmer.
you look at Idaho, it looks kind of like a skyscraper.
It's gigantic. You can see it from space. They built Idaho. It's just like the state. It's like, what's that? Astronauts get up there. They go, what the hell is that? That's Idaho.
Listen, if you showed some primitive picture of a high-rise building in the state of Idaho or you showed a picture of that to a primitive man, he might think that one's a depiction of the other.
That's Idaho. I know that. Everyone knows that. Anyway, I digress. Dane, please take us back into the doldrums of...
yes. So first of all, a huge range. So remember, again, this whole range is on top of the already discussed 80 billion that was taken. 90 to 400 billion believed to have been stolen from the...
Hold on.
Can I get more than 5
I'm sorry,
words?
but I can't brush over that. 90 to 400.
We just talked about it for
90
5
to 400.
minutes.
No, we didn't.
Yes, we did.
Because if you said, well, I was either an inch or a goddamn mile away from where I was supposed to be, nobody would go, okay. Like
a pilot lands on the freeway next to or in front of the airport.
I meant to go to Las Vegas. I landed in LA. Whatever. Just drive back over there. No big deal. Like you don't accept that anywhere else. I meant to make you a sandwich. I accidentally shit on your plate. Enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Like 90 to 400, no big deal. I got $600 extra, and they're like, "Come on."
Okay, yes. Remember, we didn't tell the people this at the beginning.
We're trying to keep this shorter.
Yeah, we're trying to keep it shorter, and we're doing 2 whole topics.
Sorry.
So I love the observation.
I'm sorry. I'm just getting.
This is like the only paragraph I'm going to quote, and I can't get through it because you can't give me 5 more words.
So sorry.
All right. So this 90 to 400 billion is believed to have been stolen from the 900 billion COVID unemployment relief program. So completely separate program. This one's 900 billion. The PPP was 800 billion. But collectively, that's a lot of billions. But anyway, that 90 to 400. So again, that's either 10% of it went away to fraud or damn near half of it.
That wasn't all of it?
No.
400 billion wasn't even close to being all of it.
No, that's the range. That's the high end of the range is 400. 450 is half of 900. I think my quick maths is working correctly. So that's almost... So
what you're saying...
That's almost 50% of the entire program. They can work that
first grade math on us. But our calculus comes out a little skewed. They're like, nah, check it again.
Common Core has found its way into federal budgeting.
Oh my...
Apparently.
So fiscal budgeting is like a weatherman. Oh, we might need 90 billion. We might need 400 billion. Don't know. Just get ready to pay it. All right, here we go.
And then the end of that paragraph says, and in addition to those 2 other chunks of billions we said.
Come on. No, there's no
This
more.
Is all in addition to another 80 billion potentially pilfered from a separate COVID disaster relief program. They didn't even bother naming this program. It was a separate one. Those other 2 were for other things. This thing only lost 80 billion.
I want my $600 check back. Just give it back to me now. Okay, because that's not the problem. This is the problem. I wasn't the problem. But you solved my problem, but didn't solve this problem.
Yeah. So by some estimates, again, because we got some pretty huge ranges here, by some estimates, the total amount to have been stolen from taxpayers as a result of the COVID relief legislation, just generally speaking of all of it, it is expected to rival the $579 billion infrastructure plan that Biden just, circled the wagons clapping himself for, this last year as a huge achievement for his administration. So the same amount that they lost through waste, fraud, and abuse in
they're going to collect
COVID relief programs are now roughly the same amount that they could have done their infrastructure program had they not lost $500 billion to fraudsters.
Well, can we start calling this what it is? Can we start really calling it what it is? Because they found, like, again, I might sound a little salty. I am a little salty. They found my $600 like that. And I believe this article says that it's going to be impossible to trace down at least 80 to 90% of the people that defrauded the government during this, right?
Yes. And if you want to hear something a little bit even more depressing than the government blowing $500 billion, listen, do yourselves a favor. I'm going to try to link to, on the show notes page, it's like a 2-minute video on YouTube. And there's no talking or anything. It's a little 2-minute video and just shows you how much $1 trillion really is. If you take $100 bills and you stack them like 4 feet high on a pallet, how many semis can that fit? How long, if you lay them down end to end, like would it go from San Francisco to New York, or how far? Like it does, visuals for that. $1 trillion is a lot of money. And when you see it visually, your head's going to explode. They lost half that amount over the course of a few programs. And then the article tries to make it sound better, but just this next one, I'm not going to read the whole paragraph. Most of the losses are considered unrecoverable, but there's still a chance to staunch the bleeding because federal officials say $600 billion is still waiting to go out the door. So all those numbers of fraud that we just told you.
We're going to do it again. That was bad. It wasn't great, but we're going to do it again. And there's nothing you can do about it. And just go ahead and send in those taxes whenever it's tax season, Dane. It's tax season. It's April.
Make sure everybody pays up. You wouldn't want that. You wouldn't want that government drug addict coming back to you and saying, "Hey, man, I need another hit."
You wouldn't want that financial fiscals to go dry, now would you?
So they're still waiting to disperse $600 billion. As much has been taken currently is just what has been dispersed so far.
Well, by their estimates, it could be $600 billion, $300 billion of that at least $3 trillion. We don't know. We don't know how much it's going to take, but we're going to bail ourselves out. Let me tell you what. And then, by the way, what happens to the dollar during all this shit? You can't just keep making this funny money crap. Like, what was it? 40% of the dollars that have ever been printed were printed in 2020,
which has global disrupting consequences in terms of the U.S. standard of living. Like China and Russia now trading in a non-government-backed petrodollar. That has been the basis of the American economy since Bretton Woods. So taking that away and saying, well, now 2 major oil producers and consumers are going to completely operate completely outside the U.S. government petrodollar controlled system. What do you think that does to standard of living in the United States when OPEC stops buying government bonds to support the amount of debt that our government goes into to hand it away to fraudsters?
Dang, don't worry.
This isn't going to be good for any of us.
Bloomberg has you covered. You're going to have to ride the bus. You're going to have to, instead of eating meats that you want, you're going to have to eat lentils. What else did they say? Don't buy in bulk, because who buys in bulk? Good God, to save money. And they said that none of this was going to be easy. No one ever said this would be easy. No, but they did say it would be 2 weeks. They did say it would be 2 weeks.
They said
they didn't.
They said a lot
and then
of
they
things.
said this vaccine was going to be 100% accurate.
Oh,
then
David,
they said
now
that
you're
booster
get us pulled off of YouTube.
Then
Thanks
they said
a
that
lot.
booster was going to be. No, I'm just saying what they said.
Listen, we can't say those things. We can't say what they said.
I can't say their words out of my mouth.
No, that's what Joe learned. As soon as he said somebody else's quotes that contained an unpronounceable word, he got canceled.
80 to 400 billion. 80 to 400 billion. Let's just keep figuring things out. So, anyway, they're doing their best.
Two very small quotes that jump out to me about this article is that it's, quote, the largest fraud in history. And then the next quote is, no one knows how big. So wait a minute. You mean to tell me that you know for a fact it's the largest ever, but how big exactly, you can't really say.
It feels like the government should look into that.
Well, it feels like of that massive range, if the distance between this fraud and previous frauds is any indication for how big this thing is in terms of the 90 to 400, they're meaning to tell you that they know for a fact how big the last biggest fraud was, because, enough smoke is settled to understand that. They don't know this one. So if they say, well, the last one was a total fraud of 90 billion, and this one could be anywhere from 90 to 400.
You know what they never say?
I'm going higher on that scale.
You know what they never say? They never say who defrauded them.
Oh, of course
Because
not.
it's always like, yeah, this was a fraud. Like, yeah, who committed it? Well, it was us. But like but we're going to do this other thing that's going to bail you out. But it's not going to. It's actually going to pay our cronies and so on and so forth. But there's nothing you can do about it. So you just sit back and accept it, enjoy your McDonald's, and have a nice night.
Right. And, when you say, something like that, that leads me to the last thing that I wanted to say about this article. I don't know if you have more, but, and I can't find it right now, but I think I do remember the number. They said that out of all of this fraud, they have arrested about 178 people. And they admit in the article, they said that the vast majority of the money that's been stolen is unrecoverable, right? Because a lot of people steal it and spend it immediately. So it's not like you can go raid their bank accounts. And
this isn't an episode on Netflix. I don't have time to watch that sitcom. I don't have time to watch that series. I'm busy. This is like how our country is run.
Yeah.
Bear in mind.
So they're saying, we can't get back what's been taken. And to really know and catch everybody that did take, in this fraud way, the end recipient wasn't the intended one. They've only caught 178 people. And they admit that many, 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 many of them are going to get away, either because they stole smaller amounts or they were smarter about the way they did it. They weren't so ostentatious with their purchases after. Like, they didn't raise the red flags to get caught. So they're telling you, we don't know how much was taken. We know we can't get it back. And we know as of today, only 178 people did it, which suggests one of two things.
I was one of those 178, by the way.
That got caught.
Had to have been one of those 178. They threw me onto that
You
tally.
think they tack you onto that number?
I bet your ass that they threw me onto that tally because they knew we caught 178. But they don't say 178 people that ripped it off for $26 billion. They say we caught 178 people. It's like, I bet you money those are all people like me that said that they didn't get the tax or the relief fund that actually did.
And you think they're taking a... I
bet you, if I know my government like I think I do, they would definitely quote those and not the, orange groves in Ohio and the potato farmers in Brickell that may or may not have paid to their campaign contributions and so on and so forth. Just
right, and as hilarious as that is, that they would consider you as a conviction. I think, I need to find it in the article because I don't want to misquote anything, but I think they mentioned these are like 178 convictions. So these are people that have been convicted, like either that or they took a plea or something. I think. Right. I think that's what it said. Okay. But let me just say that, and let me say it's not. They're fudging the numbers with cases like David's.
Every amount of rope.
Those 178 that they have caught, they have done a great service to the American public.
Now go find the rest of the 1.2 to 1. Oh, no, excuse me. I got a better one. Roll it back. Take 2. Go find the 8 billion to 400 billion people that have defrauded our taxpayer money from you. Please.
Yes. And I found it. It is, quote, across the country, only 178 people have been convicted so far in PPP fraud cases, according to the Justice Department. Many more prosecutions are coming, but even if the numbers are reached, 2,000 or 20,000, it will only be a small fraction of the fraud. So even if they convict 20,000 people, okay, over the course of God knows how long, but keep in mind, they wanted to keep kicking this can, keep COVID going for as long as they could because it was really doing wonders for them politically. Like all eyes were on them to tell the whole world how to act on a day-to-day basis. So they wanted to keep this going, knowing that $600 billion has not yet been dispersed. And the most people on the best estimates possible is that they'll catch 20,000 people. Because a lot of them are international fraudsters. There's no jurisdiction and you couldn't find them anyway, So again, here's the thing about that very, very small number of people caught versus very large sums taken, and why that's hilarious in light of what happened to David, is we say this all the time. We're not going to try to get into the minds, especially of psychopaths that run government. But either they are completely benevolent, always out for the best of the American public, and they're just super incompetent when they do it, but they have the best intentions. Or
at this point,
it is the conspiracy level that any of us will get canceled and called conspiracy theorists for, that they're all dirty and this was just a massive money laundering scheme. The reason why they're not going to catch more than a few thousand people is because a lot of the ones doing it were either in government or connected closely to it, and they were just laundering money using these programs.
What's Occam's razor? What's Occam's razor? The simplistic explanation is usually
I would think it would be the second one.
At this point, it has to be. Because if this was, like we said at the beginning of this, if this was the first time that this has ever happened, ever, then yeah, like, okay, it was an unprecedented time. But people keep getting paid off again and again and again. Like, people keep getting put into places of stature again and again and again that don't, like, how is Pelosi getting elected? How is Chuck Schumer getting elected? How are any of these people that have been there for 40 million years getting elected? Well, we know what they're doing while they're in there. Like, at this point, it's not conspiracy. It's just kind of like fact that they're taking us for a ride. At the end of the day, there's no other logical explanation for it.
Yeah, but here's the key takeaway is you don't have to get into mind reading to reach the ultimate conclusion. The ultimate conclusion is quit giving these people power and money. I know that we bang this drum, at least, if not every single episode, every other, is that why anybody would look at a series of events like this and go to the next conclusion is that group of people needs more power and money over my life seems to be a conclusion that only somebody who thinks that it's a Berenstain Bears as opposed to Berenstein Bears kind of person. You are from another dimension, okay? Everything is explainable by CERN. I don't understand how logic works in your brain if you look at a situation like that and say, these people need to control healthcare, or these people need bigger military budgets, or these people need, pick whatever your pet policy is.
The fiscal budget has grown every year since we've been alive.
So
for the government, at least.
Yeah.
Their main thing is they never succeed, and their biggest complaint is they don't have enough money to succeed. Like, when are you going to start blaming the Indian instead of the arrow? When are we going to start saying that maybe it's the entity that's not working properly that's shooting the thing that doesn't work? That's all I'm saying. Like, yeah, like aside from the like teams and stuff like that.
And here's
if you prefer blue to red and red to blue.
Something that I'm reminded of is Lysander Spooner was a 19th century abolitionist, but he wrote a lot of political theory and stuff about government. And he was probably one of the first anarchists in that sense. And he had this famous quote about, because somebody asked him about the Constitution was, and this great for liberty and freedom and yada, yada, yada. And his response was, or what he wrote was, either the Constitution has failed to prevent the government that we now have. And again, in the 19th century, he was saying the government was too big. So either the Constitution failed to prevent what we now have, or it has explicitly allowed the government we currently have. In either case, it's unfit to exist. So that's why Lysander Spooner would be like, Constitution, got to toss it out. It didn't do its job. In a very similar vein, either these people are completely incompetent, repeatedly, again and again and again, and they've demonstrated this to you beyond any debate, regardless of their right or left or blue or red or whatever, they are completely incompetent. Or there are a bunch of evil lizard people who are conspiring to steal money from people and launder it through federal aid programs. And that's why they're only catching 178 of them, because most of them are connected and knew what they were doing the whole time.
If I may.
In either case,
can I sandpaper that one for you?
They are unfit to have more money and control over your life.
Can I sandpaper that one for you?
Yes.
And make it look nice and round and
Was I mean just now?
They're not necessarily lizard people. They're just humans that are given an opportunity to get ahead. And it's kind of the same thing, that the same bill goes across the desks of Congress every year. Should we raise our fiscal income for next year? I believe we should. I believe we should too. Check. Okay. So they don't review themselves. They don't go, you know what? I don't think we did that good this year. I think we spent a lot of money on a lot of fruitless endeavors. I think that we should bring the money home where we've been spending it abroad and reinvest in this country and really make it better. I think we failed our job this year. I'm not going to vote for a raise. In fact, I vote for a pay decrease.
Yeah,
Guys.
Because we definitely have not earned it. If our quote unquote voters are our customers, they can't possibly be satisfied with our performance. So saying that we need more to fix our poor performance is just throwing good money after bad. And at some point,
weird how that pings the ear, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, at some point, left, right, or center, whatever your ideology is, at some point you have to observe reality and say, okay, I understand that in theory, this is the way I want the world to be, but I don't live in that world yet. The world I live in is X,
and I
whatever
have to
reality
keep working
is.
for it.
And if what I understand, if one thing that I understand about X reality, it's that human beings respond to incentives. And either if they're incompetent and their incompetence is rewarded, like David was saying, with higher budgets when they fail, as opposed to the way the market works.
Why would they ever get
if you
better?
give a crappy product, you lose revenue and you go out of business. So the logic of the whole thing is completely upside down from the incompetence perspective. Or from the power perspective, these are evil people who intend to do evil things to the majority of us so that they can help them and their buddies. And they're going to abuse that power.
Or
whichever of those is true,
third party,
we're going to have to come to the conclusion that red, blue, or anything in between is not good for us. The institution itself is fundamentally flawed.
Or a third party that agrees with his last statement is that they're human and they were given an opportunity and they're going to exploit that opportunity as long as they can until they're checked on it. That sounds like human behavior to me, Dane.
Yeah. It's
until you're reprimanded for your behavior, you will never change the behavior, period.
Absolutely. And in terms of that human behavior thing, and then we got to get on to the second subject because we're already getting long.
In the tooth.
Is the human behavior thing. It's like human beings are fundamentally lazy. Now, when people hear that word, they think the negative
want to get
version
the most
of lazy.
out of the least amount of work.
Exactly. And so that satisfies both ends of the spectrum of the human experience. On the one hand, if you want to get the most out of the least amount of work, that creates you that makes you problem solve, be creative, come up with tools. And that's how we walked out of the caves and on the moon, right? That fundamental drive to progress and be smarter and do better and bigger and yada, yada, yada is a great thing about humanity. The reverse of that is if human beings can get a lot without having to expend much energy, then they're going to do that. And that's exactly what these people did. Again, if they're on the evil side and they stole it and all that kind of stuff. If they're just incompetent, then they're just incompetent.
Human, dude. I think they're just human.
Okay, so then if it's just incompetence. But what I'm saying is they're responding to incentives all along the way.
Of course.
And if the institution itself, the structure in which they're trying to grow is fundamentally flawed in terms of its incentives, incentivizing the wrong thing, the wrong behavior, then we're going to keep getting the same kind of stuff again and again and again.
Until the people that put them there hold them responsible.
Which will never happen. Again, living in our reality, not as we want these very wise, informed voters who only elect the really good, philosopher kings. That's not the reality we live in. And I'm not convinced that we will ever have that reality. We thought the internet was going to have so much information. Everybody was going to be so smart. A 5-second troll through a comment section on Facebook has told you that that was a lie. We didn't get smarter with more information. And so what I'm saying is, if the reality is that flawed, biased, greedy, everything that human beings are, if they are always going to, with the incentives of this institution, put us in situations like this, no matter how much information we give them, then the institution needs to go away. Because that's the thing. This is the Game of Thrones reference. My favorite character in all of Game of Thrones was the dragon. Because the dragon, when faced with anger at, killed my mother, yada, 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 what did the dragon do?
Hey, spoiler alert. Jesus Christ,
David,
it's only been 5 years. It's only been 5 years, Dane.
Listen, you don't
they
get
might not have
spoiler
worked
alerts.
all the way through it.
Okay. Well,
some
David,
people just got HBO Max. Jesus, I'm so sorry. Put more
I haven't
effort.
said it yet. You're
goddamn
alert.
right. You haven't because
the death
you're
thing.
welcome.
Yes. Anyway,
You're
whatever. Anyway, after David's spoiler, what does the dragon do? The dragon torches the throne.
Spoiler.
And then just leaves. The dragon is so fed up with what he saw from humanity from birth until icing of flaming of the throne. Is human beings be backstabbing, conniving, yada, 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 and for a myriad of reasons. But he acknowledged reality for what it was and identified the correct focal point of all of the pain and suffering, and it was the throne. And that's all I'm saying here.
Yeah.
Government is irretrievably broken.
That's all we're saying.
And it can't be fixed.
Here on the podcast. It's like this thing needs a complete overhaul. But because we are so strapped for time and cash.
David, we're at 45 minutes. Do we even want to do this second topic? Because we haven't even talked about it. We haven't even alluded to what it would be.
It's a throwaway topic anyway. It doesn't mean that much. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, all right. Here to make it real
Tongue
quick.
in cheek.
The theme of topic 2 is David and I are here to bring you tomorrow's news today.
It adheres to what we were talking about before.
Exactly. And what we mean by that is we joke about the label. We don't take it seriously, but we joke about the label conspiracy theorist on this podcast all the time because everybody knows what the true purpose of that word is. It's to demonize and diminish discussion in any topic that isn't
not
pre-approved.
discussion, but dissension.
Yeah, well,
dissension.
Yeah. If whatever your opinion is not pre-approved by the cathedral, you don't get to talk about it.
If you dissent, you're erroneous on all accounts, and you're a Nazi, and you don't like Jewish people, and you want to kill everybody that is right.
Yeah,
you're Satan incarnate.
So, on I think probably multiple episodes, because we talked about Fauci several times on this podcast, and that again, the way we phrased it is the way we just phrased that first topic of this episode is listen, either he connived and conspired with people to do very, very bad things, or at least not do everything he could to mitigate the damage with the knowledge that he had ahead of time, or he is a completely incompetent, unaccountable bureaucrat since he's not up for election every 4 years.
Do you think he wants me doing this at the age of 80, Dane? Do you think he wants to be there?
Yes.
Do you think that he wants to know?
But again, assuming a completely saintly Fauci, the fact on the again, perfect theory, reality. The facts on the ground are that the NIH, led by him, approved what DARPA, another government agency, DARPA considered a dangerous experiment, or the risk wasn't worth the reward to fund the experiment. Fauci funded it. It went to labs all around the world, but one of them happened to be Wuhan, the same place where the virus started. And if you considered or even hinted at this quote lab leak theory, you were immediately persona non grata. And that's why we say with Dane and David, you have tomorrow's news today, because now the Daily Mail is writing an article with leaked documents from EcoHealth Alliance, that NGO that Fauci helped fund to do the research, is now saying that there may have been some meetings between Fauci and Peter Daszak,
Let me remind you,
leads EcoHealth.
They found $600 in my account that shouldn't have been there. But they can't find out whether or not Fauci has ties to the Ukrainians, ties to a wet market in China, investigation. Well, they can't find his own emails dressed Anthony Fauci. These guys are so comfortable with him. In the article you sent me, they're calling him Tony. They're calling him Tony, not Dr. Anthony Fauci or Dr. Fauci, or at least Sup Fauci. They call him Tony. yo, Tony says, like, what are you, like, hey, yo, bro, you want to come over here with Tony and Angelini?
David, I don't think you're allowed. Are you allowed to caricature or not caricaturize?
They
but
haven't.
Are you allowed to mimic Italians?
They haven't been.
Are they not an
They
oppressed
haven't been
enough group?
oppressed. They haven't been oppressed yet. Just give it a little time.
We're probably never going to be allowed back in New York, but
I mean, New York's. Do you want to go to New York? Because apparently all the New Yorkers are coming down here, which is why we can't afford a house down here anymore. Just have to fight gators for enough space on this goddamn planet.
That's true. Now, because David and I spent so much time on the first topic, I'm going to go light speed through this article and just hit on a few key points, because these key points don't really need much. And again, you can read this article at the website, but
what website is that?
wmdpodcast.com/88 in the show notes. So you can read this for yourself to get more of the intimate details of what went on here. But the fact remains that apparently there was some conversation between Daszak and Fauci. Daszak was the leader of EcoHealth Alliance. That was the NGO that got the funding from NIH to do the research that created COVID in the first place.
Or was that?
No, that was Redfield. That's coming up.
Okay.
And that these discussions and other behavior at events and stuff like that are leading to some raised flags that perhaps when Fauci came out hard and fast against the lab leak theory early on.
Not Fast and Furious.
And basically gave the official imprimatur to make that an unapproved conspiracy theory that you're not allowed to talk about, is that Fauci may have been motivated by his relationship with Daszak in terms of funding, going to events. There may have been some money that changed hands. Again,
may have.
Not conclusive, but
may have.
Yes, that's what these 100,000 documents from EcoHealth
could have been 80, could have been 400. We don't know.
Now, again, we give you the facts. You decide, as cliche as that is, that's exactly. So those things happened according to the documents. You decide what motivated Fauci. Was, again, he just an incompetent, unelected bureaucrat whose decisions like this usually aren't under a microscope, but whoopsie, it got out and killed roughly 22 million people worldwide. So now my actions are under a microscope. Is it that situation where he was just incompetent? Or was he on the take with these guys and was a nefarious actor from day one? In either case, Fauci is not fit to what?
Lead.
Yes.
Or for sainthood.
Yes.
All I'll say is that, like, what makes Fauci so important? Like, why would they protect him so much? Maybe because Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson are in the pockets of this is put your tinfoil hats on, boys and girls. But maybe because the biggest drug producers in our country had stake in whether or not this thing blew up, might have deterred the investigation of this thing happening in the first place. So all of those people that were touted as miracle magicians, this, that, and the other, it was a supercomputer that came up with this biocode. No, it wasn't. It was a doctor in 2014. Like everything that you've been told this entire time has just been propaganda and bullshit.
If not an outright lie, a heavy massaging of the facts.
Exactly.
And hiding of certain other inconvenient facts.
And you just want to accept this very inconvenient fact that Fauci was with people that had a vested interest in a pandemic breaking out.
And by the way, before we continue on, I just want to point something out. That this investigation that revealed this, that the Daily Mail is reporting on, came from Vanity Fair. Okay, so this is a cathedral of the cathedral of the cathedral publication. This is not Alex Jones. Like, this investigation.
By the way, if you turn the page, it'll tell you how to contour your face very well for cameras like this, which we should definitely invest in, because I feel like we could update it.
But here, what is more concerning about this is you guys can say, well, if you and David just throw 1,000 theories against the wall, eventually you're going to get some of them right, yada, yada, yada. But again, if you go back and listen to those episodes where we're theorizing that maybe Fauci was involved and had some incentive to not run with the lab leak theory, we give you the exact same analysis we're giving you now. So if it's just random throwing stuff up to the wall, we sure thought out the analysis of that one thing very specifically and talked about it at length multiple times on this podcast. And so here's the question. Why do two know-nothing podcasters from Nowheresville, America, come to something at least more approaching the truth than anything that was out in all these mainstream publications with all their millions of dollars in staff and promotion and everything? How did these two Hanyaks get it right? And they only admit it much, much after the fact. Well, I would suggest to you that maybe our view of reality, again, human beings respond to incentives and all of that kind of stuff, that leads you to conclusions that make sense with the way the world works, again, assuming pre-CERN.
Do you think that in 1945 you could have one of these headlines come out?
One of what headlines?
We might have paid $80 billion to some people.
80 to 400.
To 400 maybe. Billion.
A little high, a little low.
like
where's the median on that? Is it the
that's
median
what I'm
or the
saying.
mean?
It's like where's our spine gone?
Even if you did averagely bad,
you know,
you did really
the government's just the government, so it's gonna do the government's work. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, if you have that mentality, you're going to let the government drive your lifestyle back into the dirt because it's an oligarchy at this point. You can't hold them accountable for what they hold you accountable for. That's the fulcrum of our argument on this podcast. It's like, hold the people accountable for the things that they hold you accountable for, which, I hate to break it to you, it doesn't have a color. They both do it. Blue, red, indifferent, yellow, whatever the hell we are. They both do it to you, and both of them accept your complete compliance. Otherwise, they're going to fight you tooth and nail to defame you, and all they can do is tell you that you're a conspiracy theorist at this point. Like, you know, your gracious co-hosts here.
Yeah, and like we said at the top of the podcast, you know, what we're trying to do here is, again, not only destroy the bad memes that allow ridiculous behavior to continue in society because it's never held accountable for what the real problem is, but also it's important to have a logical and coherent view of reality so that you can see when you're trying to be pushed in a certain direction. There might be tons of people that agreed with us all along the lines on COVID. Right? But when Ukraine happened, when it entered into the realm of foreign policy, their minds just completely turned off. And they're like, oh, well, the foreign policy establishment in DC must know what's best. No. These are the same people. These are the same decision makers that did all of the ridiculous, irresponsible COVID policies that didn't make anybody's life any better. Not to mention, some of them may have been on the take. And if they weren't on the take, they were hopelessly incompetent. Those same people are in control in both situations. So you can't say, oh yeah, don't trust Fauci, don't trust the government on blah, 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 all that on COVID, and then go regurgitate whatever the State Department has to say about Ukraine. They're the same people running the show. So having that view of reality of, again, human beings respond to incentives. They're logical beings. So given choice A and B, they'll go down the path which is best for them. All that kind of stuff. You will see the world much more clearly and read through the BS when they put in these articles to try to throw you off the trail. Like, this article never says, we know Fauci 100% at fault, yada, yada, yada. It says, well, maybe Daszak lied to the government and they just didn't catch it. It's never on the blame of the real actors at play.
Or what they'll say is that the conglomerate, the corporation, funded the research that led to the pandemic.
Right.
They'll never say, oh, by the way, the CEO of that corporation was Anthony Fauci, the guy that you reveled as a saint. this entire time.
Yeah.
And then he's also getting pocketed by all the drug companies that are going to be making a gigantic, like, what's bigger than gigantic?
I don't know. Very big. Just go with it.
A very big windfall of monetary value to their stock.
What's bigger than gigantic? Windfall.
I don't know. Like, you can't lose. Like, basically, he created an environment where they couldn't lose. All they could do is make less money than they were supposed to.
Right.
Like, and then what do you need? Compliance through media, compliance through government, compliance through rhetoric. And then all of a sudden, these corporations that line your coffers have made billions upon trillions of dollars, despite the fact that they've never given a fuck about your health once. Like, these same companies have had multi-billion-dollar lawsuits against them for causing cancer, for a product that they produce that was innocuous as butt powder, baby butt powder.
Yes.
Causing.
And
so it's like
that little part at the end about, don't trust the same people that you didn't trust during COVID to make good decisions about Russia, Ukraine, is that. And I think this is a good place for me to leave it, because just like we talked about at the beginning, even though we come off as saying more against the left than necessarily the right, that advice or that criticism, if you will,
critique,
was based around the right. Is that they had their mistrust of Fauci and the whole COVID regime or whatever. For whatever reason that was. You could say it was because they were sycophantic followers of Trump or whatever. However you want to downplay them and dismiss their concerns about COVID. That's what was said about them. But largely, that same group of people will support hook, line, and sinker whatever the foreign policy establishment has to say. And so that's not necessarily a critique. I mean, it is a little, but so much as to say, regardless of what your ideology is, if you see the world a little more clearly, you won't be bamboozled by the party politics, the tribalism of this whole thing. Maybe before brain cancer did us all a favor, maybe John McCain and George Bush Sr. and Henry Kissinger.
Low. That's low, but we have a family tie to that.
Yes. Maybe all of those people don't have America's best interest in mind or have all of the answers, considering everything they always want in the foreign policy context, they pretty much get, and look what we have to show for it.
All they want is advancement. All they want is more money. All they want is more power. And when they're in an establishment that makes it possible for them to write their own rules to make themselves more powerful, how the fuck do you not do that? They're human. At the end of the day, they're human. They're not altruistic. They're not Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yep.
They want what they want, and they are going to keep working for what they want.
And let me just say one final thing. I want to talk to Future Dane in particular, both for the podcast, but especially for me. I am going to 100.
Dane.
I am going to.
What does the stock market do? What does AMC do?
I need.
Can we create a wormhole here?
Yeah.
Future Dane, come to me.
I want you to know that when they eventually come after you for that comment that I just made about John McCain, I will stand by it now and then and to eternity. You know why? Because I don't negotiate with terrorists.
Because we know him better than you know him.
Because what that man did and what he's capable of vis-a-vis American veterans, again, don't rely on me. Just go ask any American veteran what they think about John McCain and how much he really cared for the troops, okay? Without getting further into it than that.
If you could be troubled to
what
do that.
What my not negotiating with terrorists is a twofold thing. I'm not negotiating with these SJW terrorists that try to cancel everybody for having the correct opinion. And I'm also not going to negotiate or apologize for saying something negative about a guy who the amount of blood on his hands is incalculable when you factor in his decisions getting America into wars and losing lives over it, not to mention the innocent civilians in the invaded countries. So no, I'm not negotiating with any of those terrorists, and I'll stand by that comment all day and twice on Sunday.
Suffice to say, if you think G-Dubs was a bad guy because his dad got him into a cushy job flying jetliners, look into our boy McCain's past history. But aside from family history, to explain our tin hat pot conspiracy theories, which is what we're going to be removed from YouTube for, where can they find this tin pot conspiracy theory podcast?
Dane canceling episode.
Exactly.
Where can they get it?
Exactly.
If you only see David next week, it's because they came for me.
Hi, guys.
Weapons of Meme Destruction podcast, episode 88, can be found at WMD.
Marvelous. Please.
See, not even on the outro. You can't.
Because I thought you learned on the intro. Marvelous 88. Please.
Okay.
All right.
Anyway, this
one more time. Sound and
none of that means anything. All of that, as you'll see, is going on the video and it's going on to the sound. So I don't know why he does that. But moving on.
I want to.
This episode can be found at
what episode is it?
The Marvelous Marvin 88th episode can be found at wmdpodcast.com/88. It can be found on any podcast app. It can be found on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, and also link up with us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, where, by the way, new TikTok again, if you're new to this episode, at WMD Podcast. We're starting to grow. We had one go a little bit viral the other day. We're trying to get back up to above that 10,500 we had on the original before we got
I thought viral was a bad thing.
No, in this case, a great thing. We like virality.
Needed penicillin and shots.
So link up with us at all those places. But most importantly, get on the email list, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com. And on any app that you find us, please like, subscribe, and share. And then also leave us reviews so we can make fun of ourselves on here.
Or you can make fun of us, but don't be an asshole.
Keep doing the bad ones to David, not me.
Yeah. Give him a little bit of the ribbon.
Oh, I'm sure I'm gonna get some comments about the John McCain statement.
Ooh, we might. Maverick.
I hope that triggers all the right people.
I hope it triggers.
Well, let me put it this way.
Take two. Triggers all the right people.
Let me put it this way. I know for a fact it will trigger all the right people, because anybody that's upset about the objectively true thing that I said, we were done a favor. That's exactly who is going to be upset about it.
It's an uncomfortable conversation, but we'll have it if we need it.
Exactly.
Other than that, everybody stay safe, and more importantly, stay free.